How you doing, Paul? Big weekend in college football coming up. You ready for it?
Well, let's start with the one in Jacksonville.
Well, it's a big game. I mean, look, Georgia's going to have a couple of guys suspended in the first half, and this could change the flavor of this game a little bit. You know, the last 3 years, it's pretty much been over with at halftime. You know, 2021 is 24-0, Georgia's up. 2022, it's 28-3. Last year, it's 26-7. Over before it's done, but now, you know, you combine DJ Lagway and his mad bomber ways, this vertical passing attack that Georgia discovered, that Florida discovered, the way the Gators were playing. Put that in combination with Georgia missing a couple of starting defensive backs that were ejected in the second half of the Texas game. That was before the bye week. It was a while ago. But the rules stipulate they got to miss the first half of the next game. That's Dan Jackson, very experienced safety, helps guys get lined up. You know, one of the better tacklers on the team, and Jonel Aguero, second-year guy coming into his own in that star position, that extra DB position. They're going to be out. And this is in the secondary that lost 3 guys to the NFL draft in the top 100 picks. So Georgia's depth is really going to be tested in that secondary. They're going to have to count on another big performance from Mikael Williams and Jalen Walker. That top tandem really able to wreak havoc against Texas. You can bet that Billy Napier and his offensive line are going to be prepared for these guys.
Talking to Mike Griffith here. So, Mike, any big concern for the Dogs in this game?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think Florida's playing their best football, and I think Billy Napier, since that bye week, I mean, look, here's a guy that knew he was basically dead man walking, right? He's got nothing to lose. There's no reason to cater to these NIL guys. There's no reason to, worry about hurt feelings and, open it up, compete, and just go all out. And that's what Florida's done. So, Hugh Freeze said they were going to do that before last week's game. It appears to be working for Auburn. When you're not taking it easy on these NIL bonus babies, trying to coach them a little different because you're worried they may hit the portal. So you know what? This is how we're going to coach. This is how we're going to teach. It's going to be tough. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. If your Napier had nothing to lose, if you're Freeze, another guy, the seat was warming up. I think he might need to win this game against Vanderbilt too. I think they will, by the way. I think you go back to coaching the way you used to coach. It's tough coaching, and let these players deal with it. If they don't like it, let them go somewhere else. Let them be someone else's headache. If they're not able to handle the tough coaching and the hard coaching, a little bit of bench time while they need to develop, then they need to go somewhere else. And I think that's kind of one of the new dynamics, unintended consequences of the NIL. I think we've seen some coaches try to coach a little bit differently and realize, that just doesn't work.
So, Mike, you've been reporting on Napier all year long. Assuming he doesn't win this game, and we're going to give him the Florida State game at the end of the year, what if he doesn't win any of these next 4 games against some of the best teams in the SEC? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think he needs to win 1, if not 2 of these SEC games and look good and be competitive in the ones he doesn't. I mean, obviously, Georgia would be a huge win for the Gators, but they also play at Texas.
We know they'd be big wins. What happens if he doesn't, Mike? That is the question.
He doesn't keep his job. I mean, look, they're still upset about the Tennessee loss down there in Gainesville. They haven't let go of that. They're like, 4 trips inside the 25 and 3 points? That's a big game for the Gators. That Florida-Tennessee game, Paul, you know this better than anyone. That's a big game. Doug Dickey used to say Tennessee coaches were judged by how the Vols did against Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. And I'm sure that Florida people feel the same way about that Tennessee rivalry, that Georgia rivalry, that Florida State rivalry. I think Billy Napier, he's still got to win some games. They're playing great football. And, of course, they want to keep him. They don't want to risk losing DJ Lagway. They don't want to risk losing this incredible freshman talent. So it would be in everybody's best interest in Florida if Billy could pull off one of these wins. And I think the Gators are going to be competitive in all of them. But can they finish, which they were unable to do against Tennessee, can they finish against a Georgia, Texas, or an LSU?
Ole Miss heads to Arkansas. You have a game where one coach is trying to get out of Billy Napier Bill. And the other one, with a loss this week or next, will be out of the playoffs. Frame the Lane Kiffin train to Fayetteville this weekend.
Look at it like this. Let's face it, Ole Miss doesn't have the resources of a lot of the other elite championship programs, but somehow they gathered their money together and they delivered an incredible transfer class to Lane. That cost a lot of money. They spent a lot of money in the portal thinking that, hey, Lane Kiffin is going to get this team into the college football playoff if we spend enough money. And right now, as you said, Ole Miss is teetering. I mean, Lane Kiffin's on the teleconference talking about, well, if we only were better in the red zone, we'd be undefeated. Oh, well, if it was a night game, it'd be more advantageous. I mean, oh, geez, this college football playoff doesn't really guarantee the. Look, Lane Kiffin is up against it. I don't think he's in any danger of being fired, but he's being pressured. I mean, when boosters go out or when your NIL collective goes out, however you want to put it, what did Rick Barnes say recently in Knoxville? NIL just stands for now it's legal. But when you've got people in your community putting all this money together to deliver talent on your roster, there are expectations, right? And Ole Miss and expectations haven't always gone together in football, but they do now. They're paying Lane a good amount of money. They're giving him the money to get players. And now it's up to him to deliver. So this is an absolute must win, I think, for Ole Miss, as you said, if they want to stay eligible for the playoff. I'm not sure Ole Miss can get in even if they win out. I mean, the way this thing is working, it's curious. I mean, we had a conference call yesterday with the new executive director, and these new 12 teams playoffs, they've got some quirks and nuances, and I'm just not sure that if Ole Miss wins out, they get and look at the challenge they got. I mean, they still got Georgia rolling in, and now they found out that's an afternoon game instead of a night game. The fact that Kiffin is sweating what time the game is kicking off, it just tells you how much pressure this guy's feeling. I mean, he is up against it at Florida. That's not going to be a gimme. And Mississippi State, it's a great rivalry game. So I think Ole Miss needs to win this game against Arkansas and Sam Pittman. You mentioned Pittman. Is he coaching for his job? I'm not sure. They've looked impressive with that Petrino-Pittman combination. It's a big game for both of these teams.
You mentioned the Kiffin being unhappy about the 2:30 local time kickoff next week. Everybody weeks ago expected that to be the primetime game, and then Ole Miss helped make it an afternoon game. The primetime game is more compelling, you would admit. I realize we're jumping the gun here, but that's a playoff eliminator if we've ever had one between Alabama and LSU. So tell Lane his game is not as compelling.
Yeah, well, win your game. Beat LSU. Don't lose. If you win that game against LSU, you probably are playing under the lights against Georgia, but they didn't take care of business. And listen, I understand where Lane's coming from. His arguments are good. He's right. Night games are preferable to day games for the home team, no doubt about it. The college football playoff does have some flaws where if we're going to try to pretend that the Big 12 and the ACC are on equal footing with the SEC and the Big 10, that's a problem. We were talking about schedule strength on that conference call yesterday. I said, what's the basis of this? Right. And they couldn't tell me. They told, well, here's the service we use. I know the service you use, but what's the basis for your schedule strength? It simply cannot be wins and losses and margin of victory. I mean, even Rich Clark said that not all wins and losses are created equally. So I don't think we're out of the woods quite yet with how this thing gets ironed out in the college football playoff. And maybe it's probably too soon to be talking about all of that right now when we can't even figure out who's going to be in the SEC championship game. Paul, do you realize there's a scenario out there where Georgia could win out and be the number one ranked team in the college football rankings, but not be the team in the SEC championship game? Somebody dropped the ball there on the tiebreaker. It would take 3 or 4 tiebreakers to get down to that, but I fail to see how the opponent's cumulative record of the tied teams would be more valuable than a team
upset about
ranked.
Things that will likely not happen, but I realize you're there covering Georgia, which brings me to the final question here. We've got a number of compelling games. We have Elko on later. He's in one of them. We mentioned Kiffin, obviously a few others. If you had to pick an upset in the SEC this weekend, where would you put your money on?
Oh man, that's a good one. Well, you're making this tough because, right? I mean,
well, by the way, Griff, I apologize. We can send you back to the Alamo and you can obfuscate, or you can try to answer the question.
Well, I don't understand why A&M's only a 3.5 point favorite.
Well, that was not the question. I'm just asking you. Give me the one upset that if you were compelled to pick this. You don't have to, by the way. You can give us your normal answer. So I don't want to force you.
Okay, we don't want to force
him to do anything.
Okay, that's an
Randy
easy one.
Said, by the way, you don't have to answer the question. We don't want to.
No. We've been down this road before. I got grilled for it. Arkansas at home over Ole Miss is an underdog, but Auburn's favored by 6 over Vanderbilt. A lot of Vanderbilt people are upset about that. I'm picking Auburn in that game. I'm throwing myself out there. Nobody wants to take Auburn as a favorite, but Jordan-Hare Stadium is going to come to life. I think Vanderbilt. I think the clock's about to strike midnight on that program. Let's find out if I'm right.
So are you? What did you just say there?
the upset pick that you're looking for.
No, I mean,
is
I need to hear,
Arkansas.
like, you're saying Vanderbilt will beat Auburn. Is that what you're telling us?
No. I'm saying Auburn is going to hold serve at home against Vanderbilt, contrary to a lot of
Okay,
Vanderbilt people.
so
That
in
are
other words,
killing me on
you
Twitter.
did not answer the question.
I did. I took
Auburn is
Arkansas as a home
7-point
underdog
Auburn
against
is
Ole
a
Miss.
7-point favorite in that game.
Auburn is a 7-point favorite. I took Arkansas at home as an underdog over Ole Miss. That's your technically upset pick.
What does that mean?
You said you wanted me to pick an upset this week, and
No,
I picked
I was
Arkansas
asking.
over Ole Miss.
By the way, I didn't say you had to. I said if you had to pick one, and you could have said, "I don't really have any upsets." Instead,
Well, I don't think I'm taking Arkansas.
You're about on your third answer here, and I still don't understand what you're saying.
I'm taking Arkansas at home over Lane Kiffin because it's not a night game. It's a noon game, and Lane Kiffin is nocturnal or whatever. He wants night games. He thinks he plays better. Give me Arkansas on the noon kickoff. Lane will still be half asleep.
Okay. Well done. Mike Griffith joining us from a closet somewhere in Georgia. It is Halloween, as if you couldn't tell by that opening segment.